are from the House of Orange, 500 years ago, a small place in France called Orange. In the color orange, you can see the National Soccer League team play, and the women, or the men team, they play in orange. But today, this color orange stands for something else, to end the violence against women. And we commend the International Unite campaign, 60 Days Against Violence, which has chosen that color. And in the Kingdom of the Netherlands, we have 4 countries in our kingdom. The Netherlands, Aruba, Curaçao, Sint Maarten. And on the 24th of November, in all 4 countries in our kingdom, we'll light one of the symbolic buildings in each country in the color orange to highlight that, raise awareness. And give a very clear signal to the men in our society that we should all work together to end that violence. And as an example, for those of you who have been recently to Amsterdam, there's a new film museum, the sister museum of the Museum of Moving Image across in Queens here in New York. It's a beautiful white building. That evening it will be completely orange. As a signal, it's a very clear signal. And the second issue I would like to highlight is the need for sustainable financing. The government, we do a lot, UN does a lot, but we see currently that women NGOs have a crucial role to play. Governments cannot do it alone. Rules and regulations are needed, but we need women NGOs to put pressure on governments to take measures, to take rules and regulations, to adapt legislation. But we also see that women NGOs at the moment are struggling to get to obtain funds. And we also see that governments, including my own, are implementing increasingly difficult rules and regulations for finance. And something, certainly the governments amongst us, I think Phumzile and we are working on that as well, we should make sustainable financing for women NGOs who fight for, against violence against women. We should make that more sustainable. Then my third point is innovative partnerships. Governments cannot do it alone, UN cannot do it alone, NGOs cannot do it alone. We should look to what the private sector can do. It's a point raised by the Secretary General just before me as well. And I'll give one concrete example. In the Netherlands, we have started what we call the Fair Weather Foundation Cooperation Partnership. Fair Weather Foundation is active in 8 countries in the world, and it combines different textile factories, European clothing brands, governments, civil society, and trade unions. And together we are using new ways to address the root causes of violence in the workplace. And it touches upon the point Juju mentioned earlier. Ending violence against women, ending discrimination is a moral imperative, but it also makes great economic sense. By implementing anti-harassment laws and providing workers with the knowledge required to use the systems provided by the law, we have a concrete contribution. It leads to less sexual and mental harassment and more equal power relations at work. And it also leads to healthier employees and higher productivity. So it has a very positive contribution to the economy as well. We strongly believe when businesses are good for women, women are good for business. And companies investing in women are investing in a very smart business case. In closing, Madam Chair, let us no longer accept silence and impunity when the basic human right to be free from violence is breached. I think together, all of us here, but all those seeing us on UNTV, let us work together to find creative ways to eliminate violence against women and girls. Together, let us tackle the root causes of violence and empower women and girls. And together, let us support the world. Thank you very much.
Now it is truly my honor to present a woman who has devoted her entire career to issues of human rights and justice in her home country of South Africa. And of course here at the United Nations, where she serves as Undersecretary General and Executive Director of UN Women. Please welcome Phumzile Mlambo-Ngcuka.
Secretary General, Excellency and Ambassador Director from the House of Orange, wonderful that you're here with us today. Our special and young, dynamic guest, Aiturgan, whose story will inspire many of us today. Ladies and gentlemen, or should I say ladies and some gentlemen in a lower voice, hoping that next time we'll have more gentlemen also participating in this event. Because violence against women and girls has a devastating impact on our vision for a world where women and girls can flourish and prosper peacefully alongside men and boys. A world where we leave no one behind. It cuts deeply into liberties we should all have: the right to be safe at home, the right to walk safely on the streets, the right to go to school, to work and to earn a living and have a decent life, the right to just go to the market and do your errands and your business, the right to be at home with family happily. While we have passed many good laws, and in many countries, we still have many countries where the laws are inadequate or poorly implemented, where our police forces are not as interested in bringing perpetrators to book, where shelters, healthcare, and support are unavailable, and the criminal justice system is remote, expensive, and biased against women and in favor of the male perpetrators. Change to these elements comes at a cost, yet the price of no change is much higher and of course unacceptable. Mr. Secretary General, thank you for your advocacy, for your leadership. This was once a story and an issue that was not in the public domain. Your advocacy and your willingness to lead from the front on this issue has made this an issue that is truly in the eyes of the public. Thank you, Mr. Ban, for your quiet but persistent leadership on these and many other issues. You have questioned Secretary General, why this continues. Why is it that women and girls continue to live with the scourge of violence? We hope this will inspire many of our leaders in response to your call to show zero tolerance to violence against women and girls. We are deeply appreciative of your staunch advocacy throughout your tenure that has raised the subject out of the shadows. You are underlining the commitment that is needed both financially and politically, and this is very timely and it is also very needed. Even relatively small-scale investment can bring enormous benefits to women and girls and to their wider communities. The issue of violence against women is complex, and it needs comprehensive response, and that includes investments and resources. There are encouraging signs of countries that are fighting with everything they have. In Timor-Leste, a 3-year program to provide essential services for women who had experienced violence cost a fraction of 1% of GDP, but had a significant impact on women's health and well-being. In Uganda, a community program to change social norms resulted in 52% reduction in intimate partner violence. And we are hoping to see more of these efforts in many of our countries and communities. To the extent to which violence is embedded in society means that uprooting it is also a job of all of society, men and women, the media, the religious community. We can work together to address the inequality and prejudice that enable and inflame violence against women and girls. We can scale up prevention and increase appropriate services, and we can engage allies such as young people, such as sports, business, academia, and all other groups in society, because together we have to pare down and bring the scourge of violence against women and girls to an end. Thank you to the leadership of civil society. Thank you to the leadership of member states, our colleagues in the UN, and all of you, because without you, we will not make progress. Thank you.
Director, you mentioned the young people, and the young person that you're about to meet is truly inspiring. She is from Kyrgyzstan, and with the help of a grant from the UN Trust Fund to End Violence Against Women and Girls, she's worked to end child marriage and bride kidnapping in her rural village. Her grandmother was one such victim, so she enlisted other girls in the village to help her change the attitudes of boys, parents, and other villagers, and guess what? They succeeded. Please welcome Aiturgan Djoldoschbekova.
Меня зовут Aiturgan Djoldoschbekova. Родилась 15 августа 1999 года в селе Oosterom Чуйской области, учусь в школе имени Алубаева. Я, так же, как и мои подружки из маленького села Oosterom и села Мукур Джалабадской области, очень рады тому, что именно нам посчастливилось Национальной федерации девушек Кыргызстана реализовать проект, финансированный фондом ООН по поддержке прав девушек на защиту от насилия. В рамках проекта мы девочки из всех регионов страны с поддержкой ООН женщин в Кыргызстане, аппаратом омбудсмена и местными экспертами разрабатывали образовательную программу «Школа жизни без насилия». Программа нацелена поощрять и поддержать решительный шаг в средстве девушек, которые, разрушая стереотипные предрассудки, бросая вызов стигме дискриминации и нарушая табу вопросов насилия в семье, школе и обществе. В вопросах насилия в семье и школе и обществе вести борьбу по устранению насилия в отношении девочек, достижению гендерного равенства, союз патриархального сообщества. Подготовленные в рамках проекта на 16 тренеров девочки вторых клубных школ из Мламbo-Ngcuka Джалабадской области приступили к созданию для девочек свободной от насилия территории, семье, школе и сообществе. Проводя различные мероприятия, сумели привлечь внимание всех членов сообщества и сумели побудить к действию не только местных девочек, но и мальчиков, родителей, местных депутатов и местную власть. Тем самым для девочек школа «Дом Мисуа» стала безопасной территорией, где мальчики, родители, учителя, родственники и другие члены СВА стали уважать права девочек и отказываться от всех форм насилия. Наблюдая происходящее улучшение на жизни наших девочек в семье, в школе и в сообществе, мероприятия в наших школах стали участвовать заинтересованные девочки, мальчики, учителя и родители из соседних школ. Одним из эффективных результативных мероприятий в истории нашего проекта стало проведение в 2015 году 16-дневной кампании против гендерного равенства. Гендерное насилие касается директоров и 20 главных школ Чуйской и Джалабадской области, где провели различные мероприятия по повышению уровня информированности и мобилизации психики памяти, исцелению насилия в отношении девочек. Создали безопасной территории для девочек. Мы населены в рамках предыдущей 16-дневной кампании развернуть 46 школьных кампаний акцентом доведения информации о целях устойчивого развития до 2030 года на территории 4 областей. Тем самым отразить зараженный всех 46 школ, 46 сел и его многочисленные дома, где в безопасности без насилия будут жить наши девочки благодаря проекту НЛСК, поддержанной фондом ООН. Мы верим, что каждая девочка в мире будет образованной, иметь специальность и реализовать свое право, предоставленное в Конвенции прав ребенка.
56512. And instead of sending a text, you write UNTF20, which is capital UNTF as in trust fund, the number 20, and put a space button, pledge the amount that you want, and push send. And they will send you a link and you can donate. At this point, you can see the grand total thermometer. TF20 space, and then the amount we want to do. There you go. I'm told that we've reached well over $110,000 in just a short week. So thank you. Those who are about to. Now let's take a few moments to visit another time and place. Travel with me, if you will, to a place where women of color, especially, had to lift their voices in order to be heard. And we are so supremely lucky today to have fresh from Broadway, Ms. Carrie Compere and Phoenix Best, Adrianna Hicks, Brit Jackson, Rema, Webb, Brit West, members of the cast of The Color Purple, to perform Hell No.
All my life I had to fight. Had to fight my daddy, fight my brothers, my cousins, my uncles too. But I never thought I'd have to fight in my own house. It's sorry for you. Tell you the truth. You remind me of my mama and the old husband's son. No, you and the old husband's foot. What we say, why you so scared? I never know. But if a man raised his hand, hell no. Come on, ladies. Hell no. Girl, child, I'm safe in a family of men. Sick and tired of a woman still live like a slave. Oh, you better learn how to fight back. You still alive. You showed them girls and big back that child. 'Cause when a man just don't give a damn, hell no, hell no. No, when that man you touch me, you climb on top, start to rock me away. Lord knows I
accept our gratitude for your years of get some of our speakers prepared. We are here to have a very important discussion about the topic that is near and dear to everyone's heart here, which is ending violence against women and girls. I'm going to introduce our panel members for a more in-depth discussion and this whole idea of sustainable financing. For those of you watching via the webcast, we'd also love to hear your questions as well. If you have a question for our expert panel, feel free to share it using the hashtag #AskUnite, and we'll be collecting those and posing some to our panel in a moment. So let's begin with the Secretary General is here, as well as UNDP Assistant Administrator and Director of Regional Bureau for Latin America and the Caribbean, Ms. Jessica Paita, and the World Bank Special Envoy to the United Nations, Bjorn Erik Ilseter, yes, thank you, as well as Dr. Natalia Kanem from UNFPA, and from AWID, Angelica Arutianova. Is that right? Arutianova. So first, let's begin by hearing from Ms. for ending violence against women. What have you found to be the specific challenges in mobilizing resources on this issue? Welcome, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It's really an honor to be here and represent AWID, Association for Women's Rights and Development. I'd like to start by actually challenging a little bit and unpacking the framing of the shortfall, of chronic shortfall in this conversation that assumes that at some point in time we actually had sustainable and significant and adequate resources going to the women's rights and gender equality. That has never been the case. So let's just start from there, that we never had resources that were enough and adequate and significant coming to the gender equality and women's rights. There are, of course, champions like the Dutch, the Netherlands, and the Sweden that we have heard from, but we have to acknowledge the fact that we have never had really strong resources. At the same time, it is important to note that the overall aid flow for gender equality from the OECD Development Assistance Committee members has tripled in the past several years, from the MDGs, where it was about $8 billion in 2002 to $35.5 billion in 2014. However, what's really important here is to note where does that money go and who is it with. So it's always really a pleasure when the NGO member doesn't have to be the only one talking about how the money doesn't flow to NGOs. So I congratulate everyone on the previous panel to actually mentioning the importance of supporting women's rights organizations on the ground. So what we have noticed actually through looking at some of the data and in the soon-to-be-released OECD GenderNet report, you will see it's confirmed that out of the $35.5 billion, only about 28% or 10 billion of it went to civil society organizations in 2014. However, when you unpack even that amount of money, majority of this gender-focused funds went to the international NGOs or NGOs that are based in the donor countries themselves. So only about 8% in 2014, which is less than 1 billion, went to the gender-focused aid to civil society that went directly to the civil society based in the developing countries. When you unpack even that data, of those 8%, even less of that went directly to the women-led women's rights organizations. So this is really important to underscore that women's groups have not been benefiting from the increasing aid for gender-related work that we're seeing in numbers. We in AWID have been tracking access to funding and financial sustainability for women's organizations for over a decade, and consistently we find that the median annual budget for women's rights organizations around the world is about $20,000 a year. And this is very surprising in spite of the multiple research which proves that women's movements have been key drivers defending women's human rights and gender justice worldwide. So we really must ask why the significant shortfall in the supporting the key drivers for rights and justice, and why they are not being prioritized over the other players in the field. There's one other trend that I really want to bring up that is important for us to contextualize within which context we are talking about the violence against women, which is the shrinking spaces for civil society overall. And the context of increasing violence and repressions, which is increasing gender-based violence across the board, also violence against defenders of rights in the hands of state and non-state actors. Within that context, the space for acts of citizenship and civil society engagement continues to shrink as a result of restrictions on nonprofit organizations and foreign funding. We all know here that under the guise of civil society transparency and accountability on national security concerns, over 60 governments have passed the laws restricting work of the NGOs, calling them foreign agents in many cases. That impacts small groups even more than any others who do not have access to funding anywhere else. So we really must stay vigilant in the time of backlash against gay rights. This is an essential moment for the right-based agenda not to get sidelined in the name of national security, protection, and anti-terrorism measures. I'll just mention one more trend that is very important for us to look at when we're looking at the trends on the funding for gender equality is the approach to gender-based violence. We really need to look at the lifting individual out of a situation of violence cannot be dissociated from systemic issues that are normalizing violence or perpetuating impunity towards violence in all of its forms. If strategies addressing gender-based violence are to be transformative, they must emphasize both individual and structural analysis and include nuances that are talking about the race, class, gender inequality, and marginalization in culturally diverse communities. We really cannot continue assuming that gender-based violence affects every person across race, class, nationality, and religious lines in the same way. We needed to unpack that. We also cannot assume that lifting an individual out of the situation of violence will stop the cycle of violence. I'll stop there.
Thank you. And Mr. Gilsader, to my right, of the World Bank, thank you. We've talked about violence against women having a devastating cost not only on its victims but for society as a whole. We are very concerned about metrics in the world of NGOs, and I wonder if you can help us, because it's been notoriously difficult to measure. What can you tell us about the monetary cost of violence against women in these societies?
Thank you very much. I'm honored to be here today as one of the too few men in the room. Totally agree with that. It's a topic that is close to my heart, as I've had family and friends who've been subjected to gender-based violence, and I'm the father of 3 girls, so I'm delighted to be here. My first point is that I have to admit that it feels a little bit awkward to be talking about the cost of violence against women. It's so blatantly morally wrong. One shouldn't have to justify any action based on the cost or savings involved. But of course, there are many issues that fight for policymakers' attention. And when it comes to policy action, only those that can demonstrate a solid evidence basis and some sort of cost-benefit analysis will win the hearts and minds of hard-nosed decision makers, such as those sitting on the board of directors in the institution that I represent. As you will have heard from the other speakers today, violence against women and girls is indeed costly, terribly, terribly so. Let me share 3 pieces of statistics that may complement what you have already heard. First, a relative measure. Intimate partner violence is estimated to cost up to 3.7% of a country's GDP. This amount, 3.7% of GDP, is more than twice what most governments spend on primary education. And I just think about that. Intimate partner violence costs more than double what individual countries spend on trying to enlighten the next generation. Second piece of statistics, an absolute number. Taking a slightly more holistic view, Australia estimates that the cost of violence in that country against women and children, both domestic and non-domestic violence, amounts to 21 billion per year. 21 billion US dollars. My third piece of statistics that I want to share is that there's new evidence on the economic and social cost of child marriage, which is staggering. For example, preliminary estimates tell us that the elimination of child marriage in Niger, which has the highest rate of child marriage globally, could lead to benefits of more than 25 billion between now and 2030. But knowing the cost is one thing, but knowing what works and making the right investments is just as important. And here I'd like to talk about two things that we at the bank think that we are fairly confident we know that works. First, we know that community-based approaches are particularly effective for preventing and responding to the many forms of violence, including intimate partner violence, non-partner violence, sexual violence, female genital mutilation, cutting, as well as child marriage. One example, Zaza, a community-based program originally designed and implemented in Uganda, which I believe the Executive Director for UN Women just referenced earlier. This program addressed the balance of power in intimate partner relationships and broader community dynamics. Stakeholders from many levels of the community, including community leaders, local government representatives, community activists, and health service providers, participated in each step of the intervention. The idea behind SASA was to create an enabling environment to ultimately develop a critical mass to change knowledge, attitudes, and behaviors that perpetuate harmful gender norms. A rigorous evaluation of that program, of SASA, showed that it had been able to reduce physical violence by 52% and reduce sexual violence by 33%. Those are staggering. SASA was indeed proven effective in changing key attitudes and norms that underlie partner violence and shows tremendous promise in reducing levels of intimate partner violence within participating communities. Second and last point is what we know, that when economic empowerment interventions like microfinance, vocational training, cash or asset transfers are coupled with gender equality training that address other issues such as social norms, decision-making, and household power relations, the results are promising. Let me speak of one such program. It's called, let's get ready for it, it's a mouthful, Intervention with Microfinance for AIDS and Gender Equity, or IMAGE, easy to remember. The IMAGE program in South Africa demonstrated positive impacts around women's economic empowerment. When a microfinance intervention was combined with training sessions on cultural beliefs, power relations, gender roles, and domestic violence, women's self-confidence, autonomy, and social networks increased. Importantly, at the same time, the risk of intimate partner violence also decreased. As I think all of us agree, the cost of implementing these measures is far less than dealing with the economic and social impacts of violence. As so often, an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. Thank you.
So much. We're very much looking forward to hearing once again from Madam Undersecretary General Mlambo-Ngcuka. To what extent, Madam Executive Director, is ending violence essential to the achievement of Agenda 2030?
If we consider that Agenda 2030 is about creating a humane society where we all prosper, men and women, it is about respect does not lead us to that society. The violation of women's rights, multiple rights, with violence against women being the most dehumanizing form of discrimination, sets women apart as the citizens whose rights are not being respected and for which there's a high tolerance of this discrimination. In the SDGs, we focus on ending hunger and poverty. When women live with violence, in many cases, they are unable to work, their livelihoods are compromised, and therefore they live in hunger, and in many cases they end up depending on their perpetrators. In the SDGs, we also focus on health and healthy lives for all. Women who live with violence live with pain, mental health problems, and even death and perpetual fear. So that aspiration that we have in the SDGs, in Agenda 2030, for a healthier planet is therefore not attainable for women who live with violence. In Goal 5, which focuses on gender equality, we address violence against women specifically there in all its forms. We also address, as it has been said, child marriages, female genital mutilation, all of which are extreme forms of violence against women, which means that if we do not address those forms of violence adequately for women and girls, these goals would not mean as much as we want them to mean. It surely means that we'll leave them behind. In the Sustainable Development Goals also, we focus on girls' and women's reproductive rights, reproductive health, sexual rights, sexual health, all of which lead to a lot of violence for women and girls if we do not provide the legal support as well as the protection of these rights. In the Sustainable Development Goals also, we focus on shared prosperity, bridging the gap of inequality. Women are on the wrong side of inequality, and many of them are stuck there, in part because they live with violence and they are unable to break away from these oppressive situations. I rest my case.
Good point. I want to hear next from Ms. Faita from UNDP. We know that the partners in the UN's Essential Services Package for Women and Girls are UN Women, UNDP, UNFPA, World Health Organization, and UNODOC. But give us a sense, Ms. Faita, what investments are needed to ensure that all of these areas, health, social services, police, and justice sectors, can meet the needs of survivors of violence?
Thank you very much. On behalf of UNDP, we just want to express our continued commitment and of course also congratulate the Secretary General for his commitment, for having carried us all into this campaign. From the development side, we see that, first of all, violence against women above all is a violation of their basic rights, of the basic rights of women. And that impacts their health, impacts the well-being, impacts the direct impact, the well-being of the family as such. We have already heard from our colleague in the World Bank the steep economic cost that this has, and of course to not to women but also to societies overall, and not only the loss of productivity. So we believe that the problem of violence against women is also that the scope is very vast, is varied, and is pervasive. So it has many angles ranges from domestic violence to the deliberate use of rape as a tactic of war, to trafficking, to the so-called honor crimes, to harassment, to stalking. Violence against women and girls includes, of course, child marriage. And this is a practice that in part because of persistent poverty and gender inequality. So it remains widespread, and despite there are laws against it. And so because this is varied, we believe that we have to look at this from an integrated approach and tackle the challenges from multiple fronts in multiple sectors at once. That is the importance of why we work together, many UN organizations. That is why this is also a subject that unifies the whole UN system, and that there's one aspect where we definitely need to have coherence in this one. And in that sense, we need to new sources for and approaches to finance. Countries can no longer rely on current systems of financing or aid alone. And so we need to inspire new investors about the multiple returns that investing in reducing violence will have. So it has to be understood also from across sectors, because reducing gender violence is also improving the health of women, improving the health of children, and improving productivity and educational achievement, and reducing costs related to law enforcement and the judiciary. It also reduces the risk of HIV/AIDS and sexually transmitted diseases, and reduces risks of mental illness and substance abuse. So there are many benefits of investing in this sense, and this is what we need to actually help our investors, our donors to see it. This is also one of the important elements about this, is that now with the Agenda 2030, we definitely have an opportunity, because there are targets in the agenda, and there are specific goals on the agenda, all goals that cut across several goals, goal 5, goal 11, goal 16, but many others, goal 10. So eliminating all forms of violence against women is actually a lot of work. It just takes a lot of work and a lot of funding. And for this, for instance, we identified from the development aspect that we have that they are, for instance, they directly inhibit progress towards sustainable development. Not investing, not addressing the issue directly, we're just inhibiting overall development. And this is also another angle that we need to do. For instance, the work that UNDP has been doing with other agencies includes a variety of areas. We need to engage with formal and informal justice systems to promote women's human rights, to promote awareness raising, to ensure that the needed array of services for survivors is available, to reform legal frameworks, and the institutions that apply these frameworks, that they need to tackle gender-based violence in a very specific, in a very dedicated way. We need to continue investments in training police, the military, the justice sector officials. So they are aware that there is a need to be responsive to the needs of survivors of violence. We also need to be responsive to fight impunity against this kind of crimes. But we also need responsive training for military personnel in our own military operations, peacekeeping operations. So the partnerships with UN Women, but all UN agencies on the ground is crucial. And the essential service package, for instance, is one of them which we have heard. But there's other examples that we work, for instance, we partnerships on tackling impunity, and also for the advocate of reparations to survivors. So there are many angles that we have to tackle this. There are many areas that touch not only on the social, it touches on the economical, it touches on the justice, it touches on many. So we need to invest from a multi-sectoral point of view, from a multi-dimensional point of view, and we need to be from an integrated approach. But more essentially, we need also to highlight that investing, that funding this kind of activities is not only goes to the well-being of women, but it actually goes to the well-being of society. It has multiple returns to development as well.
Thank you so much for your remarks. An apology to our next speaker from UNICEF, Madam Deputy Executive Director Fatmata GI. I failed to introduce you when you first sat down, but Ms. GI, I'm wondering, we've heard a convincing case for investing in efforts to prevent violence against women. What impact will investing in the empowerment of girls and the protection of their rights have on progress towards ending violence against women in the future?
Thank you, Madam Chair. And UNICEF is really pleased to be here at this commemoration. Harmful practices like child marriage and female genital mutilations are, of course, huge obstacles to equality and empowerment for girls and women. Equipping girls to go for their dreams, to exercise their rights, and take a stand against violence needs to start when they are very young. So we need to protect girls from losing their childhood too early by getting married or becoming mothers while they are still children themselves. These are very important aspects of empowerment that prevent girls from being trapped in situations where they are dependent, they are controlled, and they are overburdened. We need to protect girls from losing the integrity of their bodies through female genital mutilation. We need to give them education, tools, knowledge, information so they can learn about the world, they can understand the options and choices, and make decisions about who they want to be, where they want to go, and what they want to achieve. And when girls are learning, playing, speaking up for themselves, and moving around freely, communities change their expectations of girls and women, and they are more supportive of their rights and opportunities. They are also, of course, less tolerant of violence. That's why investment in girls have huge payoffs, not only for girls, but for everybody else. And again, the shocking numbers that we've heard already this morning, nearly 750 million women and girls alive today were married before age 18. And at least 200 million women and girls alive today have undergone female genital mutilation. While child marriage and female genital mutilation, including cutting, are receiving more attention due to successful efforts by gender equality advocates to place them on the SDG agenda, the resources that are currently allocated to these large and pervasive problems are minuscule, really minuscule, compared to the scope of the problem. Financing for child marriage, against child marriage, and female genital mutilation come essentially from two sources: development aid and national budgets and investments. Under development assistance, several governments have shown leadership by supporting the initial phase of the UNICEF-UNFPA joint program on ending child marriage, with $95 million over 5 years, and a joint program on female genital mutilation with $76 million over 8 years. So what does that mean exactly? This is still less than $20 million a year for addressing child marriage, a problem that affects 15 million girls a year. So if you divide that by the number of years, it's a little more than $1 per girl. And if you look at female genital mutilation, we have less than 10 million a year, with 3 million girls at risk of being cut each year. This is less than $4 per girl to address that issue. things that we have shown in combating some of the toughest global challenges. And I just want to take one example and to compare what we're doing so far in terms of financing to end child marriage and genital mutilation, and what we have done, we are still doing to end HIV and AIDS epidemic. Billions of dollars in investment have brought the rate of new infections down by 40% and put over 12 million people on life-saving treatments in the HIV and AIDS epidemics. The Global Fund to Fight AIDS has just raised an additional $13 billion to build on this tremendous success. This is what we need to end child marriage and female genital mutilation. This is a level of commitment that moves the needle. That is the scale of investment that we need from international donors, domestic resources, and the private sector, not to just meet our goals with a pathway in a very minuscule and almost negligible way, but rather to invest as we should and to build and sustain the momentum for the deep and lasting change needed to free girls and women from these harmful practices.
Thank you so much. Resources in managing to meet the needs of women and girls at risk in violent conflicts and crisis situations.
Thank you. And I'd like to acknowledge also leadership of women, which, as our colleague from Webb said, is the way to grow these resources. So, contributing to the trust fund and also having able leadership, like our Undersecretary of General UN Women, makes a big difference to inspire women and girls around the world to claim their human right to be treated equally, as SDG number 5 says. I'd also like to acknowledge the leadership of young women, like young Aiturgan, whose contribution in her community, but also as an example, as we orange the entire world this week, we will be talking about what you've been able to do. So thank you for those. To address the question about how sustainable financing relates to women in crisis, whether the humanitarian crisis is of a political nature, whether it's flood or famine or natural disaster. Yes, adequate resourcing that is dependable and renewable and that is reliable needs to be planned for and budgeted for. And I do think that it will take our combined advocacy and skill as we sit here representing the member states who are united in this directive to end violence, unjustifiable violence against more than half of the world community. So I would say that it is our duty to provide the facts, to provide the appropriate data, and to be sure that we help to shape policy that then reflects what it is that women need. And so I think contributions to the trust fund, contributions that fight any form of sexual or gender-based violence, whether it's trafficking or other types of sexual exploitation and enslavement, and the economic argument, which was put forward by Bjorn on behalf of the World Bank and other researchers who have studied that empowering women and girls to fulfill their potential, to be able to contribute rather than to be married early, not to have their physical health curtailed by things like early marriage or rape or any form of exploitation, including FGM and early pregnancy, which threatens the girl or the woman physically, yes, and that has its costs in terms of the health system. But in terms of the mental health, in terms of the scars on her precious psyche, these are things where women and men joining hands together are making a difference, and I think our agencies and institutions working with the civil society and with governments can make a huge difference in the immediate years to come. And so I think it's only appropriate and fitting that SDG number 5 for gender equality is bound up with all the others, whether it's climate change, whether it's number 3 for health and well-being, and certainly number 16, which talks society. So if you are a woman or a girl who is running for your life, for your safety, it is true that gender inequality, the pre-existing marginalization and the exclusion, is going to be deeper for you at the start of such a crisis. At the same time, women's roles and the responsibility that women take on in these crises, to be caretakers, to be the honest brokers and the negotiators, also deepens and intensifies, because women and young people are typically the first to be victimized as well as the first responders. And they can also lead the innovation that we need to see so that we can have solutions for building resilience under such circumstances. And I believe that some of the recent declarations, including 2250 for young people and their leading in humanitarian crisis, speaks to this, as well as specifically at the World Humanitarian Summit, that Agenda for Humanity earlier this year noted that we need to work differently. We need to minimize risk, prevention being better than cure. We need to reinforce the national and local systems that are there to respond and to predict and to warn populations about impending, whether humanitarian or natural disaster. And transcending the humanitarian and the development divide is the task that we've set for ourselves in this upcoming period. So as the Secretary General's report has exhorted us, we will be one humanity. We will share responsibility, and there is no better time than now. So with those few words, I would just like to insist that the planning for the protection of women and youth during crisis, during a time of global crisis, which appears to be escalating at certain moments, is where we will be able to focus on leaving no one behind.
I'd like to get to on the floor. We're going to hear from Ms. Nyoki Rehab of the Office of Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs. Very much. All protocols observed. In the last few years, we have been dealing with unprecedented humanitarian challenges, which necessitated this, at the beginning of this year in May, the first ever World Humanitarian Summit. 180 member states and 9,000 participants from humanitarian organizations, civil societies, the private sector came together to commit to deliver better outcomes for the world's most vulnerable people, as outlined in the Secretary General's Agenda for Humanity. Indeed, the summit and the Secretary General's Agenda for Humanity recognize the contribution of women and girls in humanitarian action and underline that gender equality, the fulfillment of women's and girls' rights, their protection, their empowerment are universal responsibilities and must extend to all aspects of humanitarian response. At the summit, humanitarian and global leaders made over 500 financial, policy, and operational commitments to advance gender equality and women's empowerment in humanitarian action. Of these, close to a third focus on preventing and responding to gender-based violence and ending violence against women. At this summit, the momentum was set for a multi-year agenda for change within the humanitarian circle and to achieve equality for women, empower women in humanitarian action. But now success depends on how we deliver on these commitments. To succeed, we will only have to take a multidisciplinary action and approach and working in partnership with diverse actors. Funding initiatives to prevent and end violence against women must be prioritized in humanitarian action. In particular, the Office of the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs is keen to ensure that particularly funding flows to women's organizations as first responders, as this is the game changer in the fight against violence against women and promoting gender equality in humanitarian action. It
only by living up to these promises will we deliver to fully realize women and girls' rights in humanitarian crisis and live up to the collective promise of leaving no one behind. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now I give the floor as an intervention to Dr. Nanta Banab from the World Health Organization.
Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, let me extend WHO's thanks to give us opportunity to contribute to this discussion, and thank all the panel members for very valuable views that have been shared this morning with all of us. WHO indeed estimated in 2013 that globally 35% of women are experiencing either physical or sexual intimate partner violence, or sexual violence by someone other than a partner in that lifetime. Beyond being the violation of human rights, this is of course affecting women's and girls' health, physical health, mental health, sexual and reproductive health, including increasing the risk of unwanted pregnancies and of acquiring the HIV. Because of these findings, we believe that we are facing a situation where the seriousness of this problem, its global nature, has come to the epidemic proportion, and the world's health systems can and must contribute to reduce the problem, to prevent it, but also to provide adequate access to necessary healthcare services to women who are affected by those unfortunate experiences. This year, the World Health Assembly, the governing body of the World Health Organization, has adopted a global action plan, which intends to strengthen the role of health systems in responding to growing huge needs of women affected by violence, and also to introduce at every country level, at national level, at local level, necessary policy interventions, and to provide necessary training to the healthcare professionals who should be not just trained in delivering services, but also trained on how to do that with dignity, with respect to women who are experiencing this violence. So there is a lot to do. We need to still strengthen data collection because the data is still not complete and we don't have a full picture of the scale of the problem everywhere. We also have to work more together to find evidence-based interventions that can be most effective in different contexts and circumstances. Without this, we will not be able indeed to achieve health SDG, but also other SDGs. Ministers of health have been called to take this plan of action forward and ensure that such services are available and are provided in a dignified manner to all those who need them. However, all these wonderful plans will never be possible if we are not ensuring very strong commitment towards availability of financial resources to take forward all these interventions and to make projects, even of a small scale, such as Aiturgan from Kyrgyzstan has been telling us today, because those are the interventions that will prevent such violence, and we need indeed to concentrate our attention not just to dealing with the problem and providing service to those who need them, but also to prevent them. We need to learn how to address also long and short-term consequences, and that will only be possible if we all work together across sectors, advocate to end violence against women and girls, and WHO stands committed to contribute to ending this violence. Thank you. We have just time for a couple of social media questions, and they're relevant and they're from interesting places, so I thought I would ask them and just let you know in the audience and those of you watching online that we are going to finish up with closing remarks from each of our panelists, limited to hopefully less than 2 minutes. But let me give you the two social media questions. One question is from Zaid in Pakistan, and she asks, I'm assuming it's a she, maybe it's he, how can we
ensure zero domestic abuse in rural areas, especially in developing countries? Such a good question. The second question is from Alexandra in Ohio. I'm more confident that Alexandra is female. How can those involved in organizations with women-focused missions start non-partisan dialogue on issues to tune in all women? So those are two very interesting questions. I don't think every panel member needs to answer, but if one of you wants to embed it into your closing thoughts, who would like to start? And Madam Executive Director, I'll close the session with you. So if you want to take one of the questions, feel free. No? Okay. Yeah.
Sure. I think Zainab from Pakistan was asking about rural communities, although we know that gender violence is pervasive, whether urban, rural, etc. I do think that the question is pertinent, and it speaks to our ability to change expectations at the local level. So, whether it's the educational system, a girl should expect to be treated well, and she should be treated well upon arrival. She should not have to walk X amount of miles after gathering water at the well and doing domestic chores, and arrive bright-eyed and happy and ready to learn. Advocacy at our level takes many forms, and I think this is a great example of the United UN under the orange umbrella of ending violence together, because I think many of us have said it's not just one sector. You can't isolate the health from the education, from the other human needs that a woman or girl has. Certainly on the policy arena, I think we have to change expectations. So the idea that half should lead is being promoted, and I think 50-50 is a great example of such a campaign. From the standpoint of media and the expectations that we have of girls that are not equal to the same expectations that we have of boys, things like purity, for example, are gender applied. So I think we need to all be pure, if we're all going to be pure, and that expectation should be normative for all, and that in our communications, respectful words go a long way to making a rural girl or woman feel comfortable, able to join the dialogue, and to have her views incorporated. So I think inclusivity, making the Orange Road fair, safe, funded, sustainably for inclusivity is what's going to make a difference in rural areas and probably everywhere else.
Just a panel member at the end.
Yes, I think that with gender equality and violence against women better integrated in the Sustainable Development Goals of the Agenda 2030, more so than in any other development framework before, we have a great opportunity to, and an imperative among all human agencies to work together on this, but also with our partners, with civil society. I think that together with UN Women, with the rest of the UN system, and as part of this campaign, but as part of the work that we do, we have to continue, and UNDP is committed to this, to continue to amplify the voice of the civil society, including the women's and human rights organization and groups who work on this. And perhaps some of the important work that we are doing that we need more funding is actually to help governments, to help not only central governments, but especially local governments and also provincial governments at the subnational level to develop their own strategies, to open this space for dialogue, to discuss the issue and to translate this into actual action plans and what to do about it. So the voice of, in that, the joint work with civil society is very important. And I would say that is one way to reach to the rural areas of countries. So there's another angle that we need to do when we talk, especially this part, another part of our Agenda 2030 is to localize it. So this is also to bring it down to the local level, to the rural communities, but also to open the spaces for dialogue and to ultimately translate it into concrete actions.
Lovely. Thank you for those
from Angelica Aritunova. Thank you.
You're better with the Dutch names than Armenian. That's all right, no problem. Thank you so much. And those questions are really excellent, and they're again pointing out to the need of the grassroots organizing on all of the levels in different communities, whether it's here in the US, where there's a lot of lessons to be learned around the bipartisan engagement and talking across the lines, or accessing the violence work in the rural communities, which is what a lot of grassroots women's groups are working on, and again, just to emphasizing how they're being very underfunded. So one of the ways to addressing is that, we're talking about, we have heard a lot of the big pots of money that are either being considered or allocated are already out there, but not channeled potentially in the way that they will reach the grassroots organizing. So one of the points I want to bring up on the how is the mechanisms of the distribution of funding really need to be considering of how they are accessible for the grassroots organizations to get the money. So it's not just enough to set up, $1 million portfolio. It is really talking about the mechanism of how this money is reaching the groups at different levels to address the violence against women and girls. Another point I would say that it's really important that there's a lot of the new actors coming into the sector of talking about violence against women and girls, in particularly the question of the private sector engagement, corporate sector has come up. So there's really a need for strong accountability mechanisms to be put in place of how these new actors are entering the space and what are they doing to really contribute to decreasing the violence and discrimination, and not merely a space for influence, as we know sometimes it can happen. So additionally, deepening corporate presence is shaping not only the funding that we're seeing, but also the how we understand the social change and how we are addressing the gender equality. So we really need to be careful with the newcomers into the sector, coming in and learning from the experiences, learning from what has been done well already. And my last point would be that we really need to position the violence against women as a driver for change that is connected to all the other agendas of the UN and international community. You cannot disconnect the gender-based violence from the issues like climate change, like increasing inequality, like economic repressions, peace and security. So really, investment in the violence against women will address all of those issues and cannot be disconnected.
Thank you so much, Ms. Aritunova. I tried better. And I see Ms. G.I. is trying to get my eye from UNICEF. Please, next.
I just wanted to add one point, is that youth participation is essential. And I think what the SDGs have shown is that you have to, they are an equal partner in all of this, and we have a perfect example here, business. And these are the people who really bring the change which is sustainable. So in going to the level of, to the woman level everywhere, and really the focus has to be on those that are the most disadvantaged in the most remote places. The right is for everyone, and bringing the youth into the equation, having them as real agents of change is going to help us not only have the correct action, because they will be more innovative, more grounded into the reality, the local context, but also to make it sustainable in the long term. So I just wanted to add that particular aspect.
That's great, and those are your concluding remarks as well. Thank you so much. Talking revenue streams and accountability, Mr. Gil-Sater, if you can add and conclude that.
Thank you very much. Well, first let me say that there's no partner too large or too small to stem this epidemic. Partly as a way to bring in the international community together around gender-based violence. Last year, the World Bank launched an innovative competition called the Development Marketplace. At the marketplace, we awarded grants for up to $150,000 for initiatives that aim to combat gender-based violence. In total, those grants were amounted to some $1.2 million. To make that happen, we partnered with Sexual Violence Research education. And together, we are generating new evidence on the economic and social cost of child marriage, beyond the ad hoc evidence that you heard me quote before from Niger. And the overall report from this work is coming out in June next year, but I can already say that preliminary findings indicate that promoting girls' education is especially effective in delaying early marriage. I don't think that comes as a surprise to anyone in this audience. Third, and finally, I wanted to mention that we are currently at the World Bank concluding the IDA 18, which IDA is the concessional window of the World Bank, where we every 3 years raise funding for the poorest countries in the world. IDA 17 made some 50 billion available. We're very optimistic that this replenishment, which concludes next month, will mobilize significant resources and significantly more than last time around. And some of that will be set aside for programs and projects under the broad umbrella of gender. And in fact, it appears that gender will be a special theme within this replenishment, with linkages to fragility and livelihoods. And as a result, we at the World Bank are ramping up our work on gender-based violence and gender equality more broadly. And we're looking forward to informing you about the outcome of the replenishment soon, early next year. Thank you.
Thank you for your presence and wisdom today. In closing out the session, Madam Undersecretary General, we can hear from you.
Thank you very much. I want to start by maybe responding to the question from Chicago about non-partisan collaboration of women. Women are in political institutions, parliament, municipalities, provincial legislatures. It is important to form women's caucuses across the aisles, especially in divided countries, but also in countries that are not divided, so that when there is a piece of legislation or policy that needs to be promoted, we could mobilize all the parties in the House, because all the women from different parties will be able to work together. It's always important to remind women, whatever other issues may divide them, that on issues, not just violence against women, but specifically on violence against women, if you stand in front of a perpetrator as a woman, doesn't matter whether you're from the right or the left, whether you're rich or poor, you are a victim and you will be hurt in the same way. And that, I think, should be an important uniting factor for women to be willing to form women's caucuses, to push ahead women's agendas in all the parliaments and in all the political institutions that's they are in. And I also want to make, again, a commercial, if you like, about the importance of investing sustainably on ending violence against women and gender equality in general. Specifically on ending violence against women, what does the money buy? Most of the people, especially women's organizations, civil society, organizations like ourselves, the money enables women who would never have access to justice to have access to justice. It enables many communities and countries to develop programs and initiatives that help to prevent violence against women. It supports critical institutions such as shelters, which, as you know, are not profit-making and need to be supported with grants. It enables the passing of laws that need to be passed in many countries and supporting mechanisms for implementing those laws. It also helps with educating the different stakeholders in different countries, especially those that are responsible for law enforcement, to know and understand their work and to do it well. It also supports the ability to monitor, evaluate, collate data so that the work that you do can be evidence-based. It also helps us to generate and share information across different groups that are trying to do the same thing so that we do not reinvent the wheel and we learn from each other's mistakes, successes, and challenges. We are about to publish something that we call 10 Essentials violence against women, which is aggregated information on some of the critical conditions that must exist in order for us to address this issue comprehensively. This is based on the work that we've done over years with many of you, which has given us insights on some of the actions that have pushed the needles. These include laws, which I don't have to explain, the importance of having laws in countries, the importance of having national plans that are measurable but also funded, the importance of having data that is collated, reliable, analyzed, and of course then used for evidence-based policy making, the importance of prevention, as well as addressing gender inequality in its totality, the importance of monitoring and evaluation, the importance of resources and the coordinated use of the available resources across different groups, and of course everything else that I've mentioned also needs a resource. So these resources go all around. And then training of service providers and an integrated approach that ensures that if you're working in a community, you do not work in silos. If you're working at a state or provincial level, you do not work in silos. At a national level as well, you integrate and you work collaboratively with all the stakeholders. So watch the space for this guide that we're going to be exchanging, and hopefully it will help you to do your work.
I'm deeply impressed and humbled by each and every one of the panelists here today. Thank you for joining us. Thanks so much for you in the room and those joining us online as well, for your commitment to ending violence against women in the world. There are things that you can do between now and December 10th to orange your world. You can participate on Facebook by changing your Facebook profile picture to orange, or you can do something on Twitter that I'm told is called Twibbening, where you can change that to orange as well. You can share pictures of your 16 days activities using hashtags 16 days or hashtag orange the world. You can spread the word about these initiatives, and Madam Executive Director is so profound in saying that, all of this gives women access to justice when they have no access to justice. And you can say the same about equality and dignity and human rights. And so that's why we're all here today. Thank you so much. Have a happy Thanksgiving to those of us who celebrate, and orange the world.